Okay, let's talk about this. These so-called protesters all around the U.S. at U.S. colleges protesting, pro-Palestinian protesters, you know, in mass in front of these colleges. Let's play this.
LA as pro-Palestinian protesters and their opponents engage in violent clashes.
Look at this crap.
At the line of barricades that has been set up at the pro-Palestinian.
First of all, what my first thought is, what does this remind you of? The Black Lives Matter goons? The goon squads? I say these are government-sponsored goons, paid instigators by the government. That's what I say. Look at this. Look at him, he's got a mask on. He's out here, lighting fires and, appearing to fight for his death for Palestine, yet he's worried about some virus that doesn't exist. Look at that, it's a dead giveaway, some kind of, Illuminati freak, part of, look at this crap.
One guy
you can't even hear him. You want to take your mask off so we can hear you.
A can of what's believed to be bear spray let loose. Brawls erupted. There were fierce.
Yeah, they want to hide their identity, probably.
Over the metal fencing separating the two cans.
Look at this. Look at this. Nobody in college is gonna. No legit student in college is gonna risk being thrown out over this issue. No way. This is government sponsored once again. It's like the Black Lives Matter. Because, why? Because this government still hates the Jews. Now, I'm not talking about everybody in Congress, but, the gist of the roots of the Nazi Empire that got rooted in this empire, who snuck in during Operation Paperclip, back when they let all these Nazis escape through the Catholic Church rat lines. Look at this show! Look at...
Clouds of smoke filled the air. These guys stomped on a Palestinian flag that had been torn apart. And this video shows protesters huddled behind a barricade as it braced for an attack. Today, the university is calling the clashes, quote, horrific acts of violence. After 2 hours of chaos, they called in law enforcement.
Okay, but I'm just gonna, my theory is that this is another government psyop, and they hate the Jews, and I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna be reading some excerpts from this book. This book right here. You can't... Oops. This book right here. This is my dad. My dad wrote this book. You can't spell Jesus in Hebrew. By James Dobbs. Oops. Make sure that's... Okay. You can't spell Jesus in Hebrew. So let's begin here with a basic history, going back to going back to how they've hated the Jews way before Nazi Germany, and they still do. And following along, Christians have hated and persecuted the Yehudim, which is their correct name, unmercifully from the very beginning of their Christian existence. The proof lies in the secular history of Christianity itself. This proof is readily available today in books and on the internet. If the individual has a will to search for it and the courage to use a little common sense and a little dot for connecting when they find it. A few examples of Christian atrocities against the Yehudim are presented in the commentary that follows. I believe the religion called Christianity in Catholicism. The Catholics are the mother whore and Christians are their whore daughter, was officially inaugurated under the rule of Roman Emperor Flavius Valerius Aulus Constantinus. Let's go to his mugshot. There he is. Creep. In the early part of the 4th century CE, Constantinus ruled from 306 to his death in 337. By royal decree, he declared Christianity to be the official religion of the entire Roman Empire, and he provided the first cathedral seat in the Lateran Palace, later called St. John's Lateran Palace, for the first Roman Catholic Pope. One can only speculate as to his motives for creating this Christian religion. So he created this Christian religion, this guy right here. This is where it all started. The atrocities against the Jews. He was just a typical evil, self-serving, clever, power-mad, vain, ruthless, megalomaniacal, autocrat, tyrannical, murderous Roman ruler. He murdered his eldest son, Crispus, and his second wife, Fausta, who had previously resided in the Lateran Palace. He was a Roman soldier, politician who happened to be emperor and probably saw this new religion as a means to bring all the various and sundry religious beliefs in his vast realm under the control of one state-approved religion. However, I believe in the big scheme of things, Constantinus and his minions were just pawns for their spiritual master, Satan, who cleverly contrived to eliminate the Jews, or more correctly called Yehudim. In the rest of this commentary, when I say Yehudim or Yehudi, I'm referring to the Jews, and that's their real name. There are no J's in Israel. The phony letter J was invented by these same Catholics to eliminate the Jews' identity, Yehudim identity. Okay, this new witch's brew of a religion named Christianity, it more appropriately should have been designated Constantinus, which supposedly appealed to all Roman subjects, since it was a pork barrel religion with something in it for everybody, pagans and non-pagans alike. The supposed instruction book for this new religion was a plagiarized and perverted Gentile version of a Yehudi book called the Bible. The Bible is Yehudi, Jewish. All the Yehudi titles, names, and places in the Bible, both Tanka and Brit Hadash, were changed by the Catholics to Gentile-sounding titles, names, and places, as discussed earlier, with this phony letter J. They went a roundabout way to transliterate. The easiest way would have been to go from Ivrit to English. There are a lot of similarities, but no, they went this roundabout way from Ivrit to, Hebrew, to Latin, to Greek, then to Latin. And even then, you don't come up with a letter J. But if you can read this book, that's in the earlier chapter. I'm not going to get into that right now. That's the title of the book. You can't spell Jesus in Hebrew. The books of the Tanka were rearranged and renamed and called the Old Testament, and then copied into Latin from the Septuagint, which was an earlier Greek translation of the Tanka. The Brit Hadash, or New Covenant scriptures, were renamed the New Testament and copied from the Ivrim. The books of the New Covenant, which were originally written in Ivrit, were then either destroyed or hidden in the vast underground archives of the Vatican. The Empire and the Church then proceeded to make it illegal to make it illegal for the common people to own or read even these contaminated Latin versions of the Bible. In other words, in England, you weren't allowed to own a Bible for like 200 years, or you'd be burned alive. I mean, only the Pope of the Church could read it for you. Only the officials of the church, called the clergy, had access to its pages, and these evil people were the final authority on Christian doctrinal matters. In fact, there was one guy, it's in the book, he transliterated, he did do a correct transliteration from Ivrit Hebrew to the English, and they killed him. They burned him alive. I'm not sure they burned him alive. They killed him. They went after him. Disagreement with the church and its evil practices and practitioners was not tolerated. Lies and deception, perverted clerical employees, such as homosexual priests and nuns, corruptions, papal edicts, rituals, chants, signs, sorceries, incantations, spells, exorcisms, sacraments, inquisitions, heinous murders, such as being burned alive, imprisonments, tortures, idols, crosses, rosary beads, trinkets, bones, shrouds, and looting of property and valuables of those murdered in prison, claims of papal infallibility, opulent cathedrals, blah, 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 and an irrational hatred of Elohim's chosen people, the Yehudim, define the Roman Catholic Christian religion. Okay. Where is that? Now, let's 1 second here. Yeah. And just one thing about, what he says about the Yehudim, the Creator. For you are a people set apart as Kodesh, for Yahweh Eloheh. Yahweh has chosen you out of all the people on the face of the earth to be his own unique treasure. Yahweh didn't set his heart on you or choose you because you numbered more than any other people. On the contrary, you were the fewest of all peoples. Rather, it was because Yahweh liked you and because he wanted to keep the oath which he had sworn to your ancestors, that Yahweh brought you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from a life of slavery under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. From this you can know that Yahweh, indeed Elohim, the faithful Elohim who keeps his covenant and extends grace to those who obey him by observing his mitzvah to 1,000 generations. But he repays those who hate him to their face and destroys them. Some of the major deviations from Yahweh's instructions to the Yehudim in his Torah that occurred under this new Christian religion were as follows. And by the way, here is if you want a good, this is the complete Jewish Bible. Oops, let me turn this here a little bit. Oh, I could have just... Yeah, here we go. The Complete Jewish Bible by David Stern. And he did a as close of a transliteration as he could. And so it is more accurate. And I own this copy here. But as follows. These are the deviations from Yahweh's instructions that occurred under this new Christian Catholic religion were: A. Elohim's weekly special day of rest, Shabbat, which he clearly defined as the 7th day of the week, starting at sundown of the 6th day and going to sundown of the 7th day, was changed to Sunday. So it should be Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown. Sunday was named after the Roman sun god Sol Invictus and is measured in Roman time for midnight Saturday, named after the Roman god Saturn. It's mostly part of the first day of the week. Shabbat is discussed in more detail later. B. The Yehudi special days or celebrations which praise and honor Elohim, such as Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, Purim, Shavuot, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, etc., that Elohim instituted in the Torah, were replaced by the revelry of pagan papal Protestant holidays, which of course were not instituted by Elohim, such as Halloween, All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day, Christmas, St. Valentine's Day, Ash Wednesday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Easter Monday, April Fools. C. Unclean meats from scavengers such as pig, shellfish, catfish, etc., which is, by the way, a section in the book. How the exact specific things that Yahweh says in the Bible we are not to eat. My dad showed a chart where it was actually substantiated by a scientist who was doing this one day in a chart of clean versus unclean. And it all matched up perfectly with what the Bible says. In other words, eating a pig is worse than eating a rat. And it's terrible it's terrible for the body, etc. But that's another story. Under this new Roman religion, which was designed to replace both the Yehudi theology and Yehudi people, the Yehudim began to be severely discriminated against and persecuted, just as a hated cowbird takes over another bird's nest by laying her eggs in it, and then the fledglings, interloping cowbirds, force out and kill the legitimate fledglings. The Yehudim had to be silenced and eliminated. On March 7, 321, Constantinus passed the first Sunday law, which stated, "On the venerable day of the Sun Sunday, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed." 2. In the year 329, Yehudim were forbidden to perform the act of circumcision on slaves who wished to embrace Yehudi beliefs. 3. Yehudim were forbidden to own Christian slaves, although Christians were permitted to own both Christian and Yehudi slaves. 4. A year later, all people in the Roman Empire were forbidden to convert to the Yehudi way of life. For any who did convert, the death penalty was prescribed. 5. The death penalty was specified for all Yehudim who taught the Torah to Gentiles or encouraged Gentiles to embrace Yehudi beliefs. 6. Yehudi converts to Christianity were promised certain privileges and rewards, but they were never really trusted and were constantly being watched. 7. All intermarriage between Yehudim and Gentiles were forbidden, unless a Yehudim converted to Christianity. The Yehudi women as well as a Yehudi man would suffer death for intermarriage, but not the Gentile man. 8. Yehudi beliefs were referred to in imperial pronouncements as a secta nefaria, namely the unspeakable religion and the bestial religion. 9. Christianity was installed as the official religion of the Roman Empire. 10. As a final touch, Constantinus reinstated the ancient command of Emperor Hadrian, issued after the Yehudi uprising in Bar Kokhba, which forbade any Yehudi to set foot in Jerusalem. 11. Later in 364, at the Council of Laodicea, during the reign of Pope Liberius, it was decreed Christians are not allowed to be idle or to speak of their... Jews are not allowed to be idle or to speak of their beliefs on Shabbat, but instead must work. So it was done. Christianity was established in the Western world in the holy hatred of the Yehudim themselves and their practices, a hatred that would exact from the Yehudim suffering beyond description, untold millions of lives, and a river of blood and burnt bodies. From the Jews' Story of a People by Howard Fast. Another disciple of Satan called Muhammad came along 300 years after Constantine and started another replacement theology religion called Islam. Both Islam and Christianity are monotheistic. One worships a deity called God or Lord, and the other a deity called God or Allah in nature, and they both share a common, irrational, almost insane hatred for Elohim's people, the Yehudim. They also both preach a doctrine of hate and death to infidels and heretics. It's convert or die. They differed, however, in their preferred method of punishment for heretics. Catholic Christians like to tie their heretics to a stake and burn them alive, while the Muslims were a little more humane and would usually just slit the throats or behead their dissidents. Both religions are responsible for the shedding of a lot of innocent Jewish, again, they're called Yehudi blood, as well as Gentile. But nobody is even close to the Catholic Church when it comes to total Yehudi body count. The history of the Yehudi diaspora in Europe is simply the story of the Yehudim trying to stay one step ahead of their Christian executioners, who approached them holding a crucifix in their left hand and a sword in their right. A few historic examples of some of the more egregious atrocities Christendom is responsible for as follows. Okay, so start in Egypt here. The power and numbers of the Jews living in Alexandria, Egypt. Now let's shift to this guy here. Cyril of Alexandria. The power and numbers of the Jews living in Alexandria, Egypt had shrunk subsequent to the overthrow of the Ptolemies by Rome in 180 BCE, but they managed to hold their own until the time of Christianity, when formal anti-Semitism replaced the intermittent anti-Semitism that they had combated for so long by the half-Hellenized pagan Egyptians. Yet they maintained themselves as an important community until the year 415 CE, when Catholic Bishop Cyril, there he is, instigated a brutal mob movement against them. Thousands of Jews were slaughtered by the Christian mobs, and thousands more were given the choice of baptism or death, watching their wives and children blinded. Some chose death, but many more gave in and accepted baptism. Subsequently, most of them who had been baptized fled from Egypt to begin life again as Jews in another land. Consider over 200 years of Catholic Crusades atrocities. Taking of Jerusalem by the Crusaders under the guise of Muslims. From 1090 to 1320, the Crusades were primarily a campaign to brutally murder as many Yehudim as possible in the name of Christ, of course under the guise of fighting the Muslim Turks or Ottomans. In Worms, Germany, all the Jews were killed. Killing the infants, the Crusaders cried out that they were saving the souls of the children for Christos. There, as in most places, Jewish houses, synagogues, and community buildings were burned. In Neuss, Germany, the Crusaders were drunk, and in the spirit of good fun, they threw more than 20 women and almost 100 children into the river, seeing how far 2 men could fling a screaming child. At Moors, Germany, almost 1,000 Jewish bodies were observed floating in the Rhine. In the Rhine. In Regensburg, Germany, the Jews were cut down in the streets. Count Agather likened it to rabbit hunting. A great pile of Jewish bodies was dragged into the main square, and crusaders amused themselves by beheading the dead. Over 4,000 Jews were killed in this Rhine district alone. It wasn't just German and French Christians who were busily and eagerly murdering Yehudim during the Crusades in Europe. Followers of Richard the Lionhearted turned their attention to the Jews of Lynn, England, killing all of them they could catch, stripping the bodies naked, and then pillaging the Jewish houses they went on to Stamford. In York, a half-insane mob led by some drunken crusaders marched to attack the Jews. About 500 of them fled to the Royal Kelp. And after the Crusades, Catholic Germany became a place of unremitting horror for the Jew. Hatred for the Jew became part of German being, German culture. You know, we had the Spanish Inquisition. The tortures of the Spanish Inquisition hold dark lessons. I mean, they would torture these people. Anatomy of torture. Look at that. I mean, the Spanish Inquisition was officially born on September 7th of 1480, when Pope issued a papal bull edict of the Pope giving the Spanish sovereign and Pope Innocent V sanctioned the use of torture in 1252. The inquisitor was to be maintained by the property of the victim, and his property was taken upon arrest. No defense was permitted, and the names of accusers were hidden. These were features that would also distinguish the Spanish Inquisition, though that institution developed them to a high pitch of sadistic perfection. And like I said, in the 146th town, in grim German affairs, women and children were murdered along with the men. Nowhere in ancient warfare among so-called pagans or barbarians do we find anything to match this Christian wrath against the people. And I'm going to end here, and then I'm going to continue because I'm running out of time. I'm going to continue with a part 2 to this video, so stay tuned in. I'm just going to turn this off and continue on with my next video. It's labeled part 2.